Chain Jail. Kurapika is a conjurer, and his weapon of choice is one of the most unique in the world of nin. 5 chains, each one extending from a finger on his right hand. Since these chains are created through his nin, he has complete control over their size, their length, and their movement. While each chain has a specific purpose, several of them were crafted with one clear goal: to extract revenge on the Phantom Troop for wiping out his clan. Capturing each troop member would be the first step towards that goal, and for that, Kurapika needed something capable of holding enemies with terrifying strength. Conjuring an unbreakable chain through nin alone is impossible, but Kurapika's mentor taught him a crucial workaround: the use of nin conditions. These are rules or requirements applied to an ability to boost its power, or make it possible in the first place, especially if the user doesn't have the raw skill needed to create it otherwise. Conditions are grounded in the idea of equivalent exchange. To gain more power, you must give something up. Many abilities in nin require meeting specific conditions before they can even be activated, but there's another layer that can push an ability far beyond its normal limits: self-imposed restrictions. These are stricter limitations that the user voluntarily places on themselves, and the tighter and riskier the restriction, the stronger the ability becomes. Limitations have been shown to strengthen an ability even more than standard conditions, since they directly reflect the user's resolve. The greater the sacrifice or risk, the greater the boost in power. When you officially commit to following these conditions and limitations, it's called making vows or contracts. Nin itself is a manifestation of willpower, so taking on dangerous or even life-threatening risk is a way of proving absolute commitment to the ability. Using this principle, Kurapika developed his middle finger chain, Chain Jail. This chain, ending in a sharp hook, was made with one purpose only: to capture the members of the Phantom Troop. Kurapika set a strict limitation that the ability can only be used on the troop. But he didn't stop there. He added an even more dangerous stipulation. If he used Chain Jail on anyone outside the Phantom Troop, he would die. He sealed this vow by piercing his own heart with his Judgment Chain. This life or death clause dramatically increased the chain's strength, since it put his own life at stake every time the ability came into play. To prove its power, Kurapika deliberately went after the physically strongest troop member, Uvogin, and managed to restrain him after a fierce battle. The chain's conjuration speed is so fast that it can completely bind a distant target in half a second. Once it wraps around an opponent's limbs and body, movement becomes impossible. On top of that, Chain Jail forces the captured target into Zets, cutting off their aura flow and shutting down their ability to use nin. The only way to escape is through brute force, but even Uvogin, with all his raw strength, couldn't break free. Conjura is a natural conjurer, but he also possesses something no other nin users have: the Scarlet Eyes. Except for his ring finger, dowsing chain, and index finger steel chain, all of his other chains, including Chain Jail, can only be used when his eyes turn scarlet. This condition has been part of the ability from the start, further amplifying its power. How the Scarlet Eyes works and what they bring to Kurapika's ability is a story on its own, and that's what we're going to talk about next. Emperor Time. The Kurta clan has this incredible trait where their eyes turn a brilliant red when they get angry or emotional. This transformation brings a massive boost in physical strength that's pretty mind-blowing. Even as a kid, Kurapika could take on 3 grown adults when his eyes went scarlet, outpacing and overpowering them like it was nothing. But this power comes with a serious downside. When those Scarlet Eyes activate, Kurapika completely loses control. All of his restraint and logical thinking just vanish, leaving him in a complete primal state. In his normal state, he has total control over these chains. Their size, length, and movement all bend to his will. But when those Scarlet Eyes ignite, everything changes dramatically. His aura explodes upward, and he enters Emperor's Time, a state that transforms his very nature as a nin user. Instead of being limited to conjuration, like most people are stuck with their birth category, Kurapika shifts from his natural conjurer type to become a specialist. This transformation is absolutely game-changing. During Emperor Time, Kurapika can use every single nin category at 100% efficiency. To understand how incredible this is, you need to know about the 3 components that make up nin mastery: level, force, and accuracy. Your level in each category stays fixed. It represents your raw skill and understanding. Force determines how much power you can put behind an ability. Accuracy affects how precisely you can execute techniques. Normally, people can only reach 100% force and accuracy in their birth category, while opposite categories might only reach 40%. During Emperor Time, Kurapika's level stays the same, but his force and accuracy shoot up to 100% across every category. So if his conjuration level is 10, his emission level might only be 4, but he can now use emission abilities with the same force and accuracy as a natural level 4 emitter. This makes him incredibly versatile and dangerous. Emperor Time also serves as the activation requirement for most of his chains. Only the dowsing chain and steel chain work without his eyes turning red, but even these abilities get major upgrade during Emperor Time. The dowsing chain normally needs direct contact with a target to detect lies. With Emperor Time active, Kurapika can use it through video recordings as long as he met the person before. The expansion of range and application makes his lie detection far more practical for investigation work. The steel chain becomes even more terrifying during Emperor Time. Normally, it can steal abilities by piercing targets with its syringe, and Kurapika keeps those stolen abilities even if the original owner dies. But when combined with Emperor Time, Kurapika can summon a dolphin-like nin beast equipped with syringes on its fins. This creature doesn't just steal abilities, it analyzes them too, giving Kurapika detailed information about their name, functions, and conditions. After stealing an ability, he can either use it himself or loan it to other people, including those who can't normally use nin. The syringe from Steel Chain injects the ability directly into them. Stealing abilities like this is far beyond standard conjuration. It's firmly in the realm of specialization. His little finger's Judgment Chain uses both emission and manipulation to deliver a deadly verdict. It can pierce the target's heart and enforce an unbreakable condition on their life. His thumb's Holy Chain taps into enhancement-type nin to heal severe injuries, even something as serious as a broken arm in seconds. With Emperor Time, Kurapika wields all these chains with maximum effectiveness, creating a nin skill set so complete it can feel almost unfair. But nothing in nin comes without a price. This represents a different type of nin condition. Not a penalty that activates when rules get broken, but a constant toll that has to be paid for using the ability. These toll-type conditions don't regulate how an ability gets used or punish rule violations. Instead, they extract a price simply for accessing the power. Unlike limitation penalties that can shut down nin abilities when violated, toll conditions function more like a continuous payment system, and Emperor Time exemplifies this perfectly.
Gamer Supps is an energy and nootropic formula designed to be a healthier, cheaper, and more effective beverage over energy drinks for gamers or the modern anime weeb on the go. Its blend of essential vitamins, caffeine, and nootropics provide a consistent boost with no jitters and no crash. It has 0 sugar, less than 1 carb, and less than 1 calorie per serving, so it's keto and diabetic safe. Plus, there's sugar-free options. I personally drink it all the time to be able to grind out these straight to the point and informative videos for you guys, and they'll likely be the only sponsor you'll ever see on this channel. So help the channel stay mostly sponsor-free by clicking the link in our description, picking from the many tasty and uniquely named flavors on the website, and use our code ANIMEX at checkout to save 10% on your order. It would be a huge help for us. Also, pick yourself up a aesthetically interesting waifu cup while you're at it too. They're collectible. But anyway.
Adult transformation. Gon is an enhancer, which means he was basically born with incredible strength and healing abilities that most people can only dream of. Under Biscuit's intense training, he expanded his skills into at least 2 other nin types, emission and transmutation. He pushed these abilities far enough to create actual working techniques in his Janjanken ability, which is pretty impressive for someone so young. Initially, Gon showed more talent in emission than transmutation, but by the time he encountered Kite in the NGL, his transmutation skills might have actually surpassed his emission abilities, judging by how his combat techniques developed over time. Despite his cheerful, innocent appearance, Gon is actually one of the most complex and psychologically intense characters in the entire series. His simple-minded approach to life becomes a serious weakness when his emotions get triggered. He loses all rational thinking and becomes completely tunnel vision on whatever's bothering him, and nothing has pushed him over the edge quite like what happened to Kite. When the Chimera Ant Royal Guard Neferpitou killed Kite, something inside Gon completely shattered. Kite represented everything Gon never had, a father figure who was actually present, a mentor who cared about him, someone who filled the void left by Jing's absence. Discovering Kite's corpse being used as nothing more than a training puppet was the final straw that broke Gon's mental state completely. The guilt hit him first. He blamed himself for being too weak to protect someone he cared about. This self-hatred sent him spiraling down a dark psychological path, where he had to face some truly disturbing aspects of his own personality. All that rage and frustration eventually focused like a laser beam on Neferpitou, the one responsible for Kite's death. Standing face to face with a royal guard who is ready to kill him, he made a desperate decision. In a moment of complete emotional breakdown, he formed the ultimate nin vow. The condition was simple but devastating. He would sacrifice all his future potential, all of his natural talent, everything he could ever become, in exchange for enough power to defeat Neferpitou right now. He literally traded decades of growth and development for a single moment of overwhelming strength. What happened next was one of the most jaw-dropping transformations in anime history. Gon's body began changing, growing into the adult form he might have achieved after decades of intensive training. His physical strength exploded beyond comprehension. His nin abilities amplified to terrifying levels. His aura output and reserves increased so dramatically that even Neferpitou started genuinely fearing he might pose a threat to Meruem himself. The most incredible part was that Gon pulled this off with virtually no knowledge about how nin vows actually work. The only information he had came from Kurapika's brief explanation of his own abilities. Yet somehow, through sheer emotional intensity and desperation, he managed to create one of the most powerful nin contracts ever seen. In his transformed state, he became an absolute monster in combat. His speed and reflexes let him easily dodge Pitou's Tepsakura attacks, even when they were pushing themselves beyond their normal limits. A single co-enhanced kick was enough to launch Pitou dozens of meters into the air and make them cough up blood. This was the same royal guard who had previously taken hits from Isaac Netero without showing any significant damage. When Gon unleashes adult form Janjanken, the attack blasted Pitou up the side of the hill and knocked them completely unconscious. But Gon wasn't done. The rage that had been building up inside him demanded complete destruction. He began smashing the incapacitated ant repeatedly, with continuous Janjanken attacks until their skull literally shattered into pieces. Even when Pitou's post-mortem nin allowed them to fight back as a corpse, it wasn't enough. Gon finished them off with the most explosive Janjanken technique ever witnessed, but the price for this power was exactly as severe as promised. Pitou had correctly guessed that only an extraordinarily gifted individual could pull off such a transformation by willingly throwing away their entire future and compressing their whole life into a single moment. They predicted that Gon would never be able to use nin again, and they were right. After the royal guard's death, Gon's body immediately returned to its normal child form and he collapsed into a coma. His condition rapidly deteriorated as his body began to decay. He required constant life support just to stay alive, and doctors expected him to die without some kind of miracle intervention. That miracle came in the form of Nanika, whose wish-granting abilities managed to save Gon's life and restore physical health. However, even after making a complete recovery, Gon remained completely unavailable to see or use aura. According to Jing, Gon had simply returned to normal, and should consider himself lucky for escaping with relatively minor consequences. Right before Gon finished off Pitou, Killua had feared that the more aura Gon used during his transformation, the worse the backlash would be. This suggests that rather than requiring Gon's immediate death, the transformation probably shaved away a portion of his total lifespan equivalent to the massive amount of power he unleashed while transformed. The exact nin types involved in Gon's transformation remain unknown, though many speculate it represents an extreme form of enhancement taken to its absolute limits, and whether Gon will ever regain his nin abilities is still a complete mystery. Skill Hunter. Corolla Lucifer is one of the most dangerous specialists in the HunterxHunter universe, and his nin ability perfectly matches his reputation as the leader of the Phantom Troop. Skill Hunter represents everything about Corolla's nature as a master thief. It's literally designed to steal other people's nin abilities and add them to his personal collection. He conjures a book called Skill Hunter that serves as his repository for stolen abilities. When he successfully steals someone's nin technique, that person loses access to it completely while Corolla gains the power to use it whenever he wants. Each stolen ability gets stored on its own page within the book, creating a growing library of techniques that makes Corolla incredibly versatile and unpredictable. But this incredible power comes with strict rules that must be followed exactly. He can't just walk up to someone and steal their ability on a whim. The theft process requires 4 specific conditions to be met within a 1-hour time frame. First, he must personally witness the target's nin ability being used with his own eyes. He can't rely on secondhand information or descriptions. He needs to see the technique in action to understand how it works. Second, he has to engage the victim in conversation about nin and get them to answer his questions. This requirement forces him to be somewhat social and interactive during the theft process, which fits his manipulative personality. Third, the victim's palm must physically touch the handprint on the Skill Hunter cover. This is probably the trickiest condition since it requires direct physical contact, meaning he needs to get close enough to his target without raising suspicion. Fourth, all 3 previous conditions must be completed within 60 minutes. This time limit prevents him from taking weeks or months to slowly work on a target. Once these conditions are satisfied, the ability transfers to his book and disappears from the original owner's arsenal. To activate his stolen technique, he conjures Skill Hunter and flips to the relevant page. The book must stay open in his right hand while he uses the ability, which means he can only access one stolen technique at a time. When he needs to use a stolen ability that requires both hands, he conjures a bookmark called Double Face to get around this problem. This bookmark lets him keep access to whatever ability is on the page where he places it, even when the book gets closed and he's not holding it anymore. It's basically a loophole for one of Skill Hunter's main restrictions. With both hands free, he can mix hand-to-hand combat with his stolen abilities, making him way more dangerous in close quarters. Plus, if he keeps the book open to one page while using the bookmark on a different page, he can actually use two stolen abilities at the same time. The bookmark is part of the book itself, not something he stole from someone else. The stolen abilities retain all their original characteristics, including the creator's emotions and personal limitations. He discovered this firsthand when he couldn't use order stamp on corpses, even though he personally views dead bodies as just objects. The ability still carried its original owner's perspective, and that corpses shouldn't be manipulated. Another major limitation is that stolen abilities vanish from the book if the book's original owner dies. This creates an interesting dynamic where Chrollo might actually want to keep his victims alive to maintain access to their powers. However, postmortem Nin changes this rule. If someone's Nin continues functioning after death, Chrollo can still use their stolen ability. Expert Nin users can sometimes figure out Chrollo's conditions through careful observation. Zeno demonstrated this during their encounter, correctly guessing that Chrollo needed to fulfill 4 or 5 specific requirements before stealing an ability. During his intense battle with Hisoka, Chrollo revealed another aspect of Skill Hunter, the ability to borrow techniques from willing Nin users rather than stealing them permanently. Before the fight, he borrowed Gallery Fake from Kotorpi, which lets him create perfect copies of objects by touching them with his left hand and conjuring the duplicate with his right. He also borrowed Black Voice from Shalinark, allowing him to completely control targets by sticking an antenna into them and manipulating them through a phone. After defeating Hisoka, Chrollo called Shalinark to arrange the returning of Black Voice, suggesting that borrowed abilities can be given back to their original owners. The exact conditions for returning abilities remains unclear, but borrowing probably requires meeting the same strict requirements as stealing. Skill Hunter possesses an additional feature that makes it even more dangerous, the ability to upgrade itself. Chrollo has mentioned needing to enhance his book to steal certain specific abilities, and this upgrade process requires him to steal items classified as national treasures. This condition creates an interesting side quest where Chrollo must target extremely valuable objects to unlock his ability's next level. The exact nature of these upgrades remains mysterious, but they likely involve removing some of the current limitations or conditions. Maybe upgraded Skill Hunter won't require the original owner to stay alive, or perhaps it could eliminate some of the 4 theft conditions entirely. Chrollo believes these upgrades are necessary to definitively defeat Hisoka in their ongoing conflict. As a specialist, Chrollo faces certain limitations when using stolen abilities from other Nin categories. Techniques that fall far from specialization, like enhancement abilities, become much harder for him to use effectively. The stolen powers run on his own aura rather than their original owner's energy, which means he performs best with specialist, conjuration, and manipulation techniques. This category limitation might explain why Chrollo is so interested in upgrading Skill Hunter. An enhanced version could potentially grant him full potency across all Nin types, removing the natural disadvantages that come with being a specialist. Painpacker. Phaeton holds the number 2 spot in the notorious Phantom Troop. He specializes in transmutation type Nin, and his signature ability, Painpacker, works in the most backward way imaginable. Most Nin users take on risk after they've already powered up their abilities, but Phaeton flips that around. His Nin ability won't even activate unless he takes on the risk first, making them the very requirement for using it. The ability only kicks in after Phaeton gets hurt and absolutely loses his mind with rage. The activation requirement may suggest that it is counteractive. Painpacker feeds off of damage and fury. The worse Phaeton gets beat up, the more devastating his counterattack becomes. His aura output skyrockets because he's willing to take massive risks, and those risks translate directly into raw power. Once he's taken enough punishment and reached that breaking point of anger, Painpacker activates. The ability made its debut during Phaeton's brutal showdown with the Chimera Ant squadron leader, Zazen. Things got nasty when Zazen snapped his left arm. Phaeton started muttering curses in his native tongue, completely unhinged with rage. That injury, combined with his explosive anger, checked all the boxes for Painpacker to activate. What happened next was insane. Massive amounts of Nin erupted from him, so intense that his regular clothes transformed into a full suit of armor. He then transmuted his aura into blistering heat, with temperatures directly tied to how much damage he had absorbed during the fight. His Rising Sun technique takes things to another level entirely. Phaeton shoots a ball of concentrated aura into the air, and it morphs into a miniature sun that incinerates everything in its path. While wearing his armor, he stays completely safe from the heat and gets a steady oxygen supply. Zazen got slowly reduced to ash while the entire battlefield turned into an inferno. The heat was so intense that even the other Phantom Troop members had to evacuate the area because Phaeton's miniature sun would obliterate anything within its massive range. Finks mentioned that Painpacker covers a huge area and has multiple variations beyond what they witness. Rising Sun remains the only version of Painpacker that anyone has actually seen in action. Cat's name. When it comes to counteractive nin abilities that only kick in after the user takes a hit, nobody pushes that idea further than Camila Huiguo. This second prince of the Kakin Empire takes part in the succession contest, and her approach to combat is completely unhinged. While Phaeton needs damage and rage to trigger his ability, Camilla takes this concept up to the extreme by requiring her actual death. Her cat's name ability only works after someone kills her completely. Once she dies, a massive cat-like nin beast materializes behind whoever did the deed. This thing grabs the killer with its paws and starts draining their life force, completely destroying their body in the process. The extracted life energy flows into the tip of the beast's tail, making it glow bright white. Then the cat creature pours all that stolen life essence straight into Camilla's mouth, healing every injury and bringing her back to life. This ability taps into post-mortem nin, making it incredibly potent and turning Camilla into someone practically impossible to eliminate permanently. She first showed off this wild technique when she decided to take out First Prince Benjamin. On her way to confront him, she ran into one of his soldiers and straight up told him about her assassination plans. She started taunting the soldier to shoot her when she was in Zet state. The soldier took the bait and fired 3 shots, hitting her in the forehead once and in the chest twice. She dropped dead instantly, but then her nin ability kicked in, consuming the soldier completely to restore and revive her. She then barged into Benjamin's quarters and tried provoking his soldiers into shooting her with a gun, but Benjamin saw right through her strategy and commanded his troops not to attack. Benjamin and his soldiers figured out the massive flaw in her ability and exploited it ruthlessly. Since death triggers the ability, Camilla cannot negate damage without actually dying first. This leaves her completely vulnerable if opponents refuse to deliver that fatal blow. One soldier simply restrained her with handcuffs and she ended up locked in a holding cell, totally helpless. Nobody knows for certain if she needs to be in Zet state when killed for the ability to activate, adding another layer of mystery to this already bizarre technique. Crazy slots. Kite is a skilled hunter and student of Ging Freaks. His early meeting with Gon became a major driving force behind the young boy's determination to become a hunter. As a conjurer, Kite can create multiple constructs, but his signature ability, Crazy Slots, makes him one of the most unpredictable fighters around. Crazy Slots gives Kite access to 9 different weapons, each numbered 1 through 9 and paired with a clown figure that selects which weapon to conjure. Like other conjurers who strengthen their ability through restrictions, Kite set his own unique limitation and condition. The weapon he receives get chosen completely at random, which means he cannot choose a weapon of his liking, and once summoned, he has to use it before getting another roll. No takebacks, no reroll if the weapon sucks for the situation. This restriction supposedly boosts the power of whatever weapon appears. The random nature of his weapon selection completely changes how Kite approaches combat. Most fighters can rely on their preferred weapons and develop strategies around their strengths, but Kite gets whatever fate decides to give him. Some weapons work better against specific opponents, but his massive arsenal becomes more of a gamble than an advantage. He basically throws strategy out the window and relies on his skills to make any weapon work in any situation. Kite might be talented enough to adapt to most situations, but going up against strong opponents with a randomly selected weapon could mean the difference between life and death. The randomness factor severely limits his ability to strategize, no matter how experienced he is as a hunter. Despite these obvious risks, the sentient clown making the weapon choices seemed to have decent judgment. Out of the 3 times Kite summoned weapons, only 2 appeared in actual combat, and both matched their situations perfectly. The first was a carbine for a duel scenario, while the second was his famous scythe when he needed to take down multiple enemies at once. Both weapons fit their circumstances, though Kite complained about getting bad rolls each time while the clown got visibly upset about his complaints. The randomness system includes one major exception, a mace-like weapon that appears specifically when Kite desperately wants to survive. According to Jing, this emergency weapon might have triggered Kite's eventual reincarnation as a chimera ant. The full potential of Crazy Slots remains a mystery since Kite lost access to his nin abilities after being reborn as a female chimera ant. Nobody knows if this transformation changed her aura type, whether she could relearn her old techniques, or if she can even use nin anymore. The complete scope of what Crazy Slots could accomplish might never be revealed. Hakawari. Knucklebine works as a beast hunter and serves as Morel's apprentice, bringing serious conjuring skills to the table. This guy has an incredible mind for numbers, cranking out complex calculations instantly without making mistakes. His mathematical genius translates perfectly into his ability to convert aura into numerical values, which becomes crucial for his nin ability, Hakawari. Hakawari kicks in the moment Knuckle lands a hit on someone. Once he connects with his target, he conjures an indestructible nin beast mascot called the Amortizing Power Redirector, or APR for short. This thing latches onto his opponent and stays there as long as Hakawari remains active. The concept behind this ability gets pretty wild. Knuckle basically becomes an aura loan shark. When APR attaches to someone, Knuckle lends his aura to his enemies rather than damaging. If they can't pay him back by landing hits on him, the number displayed on APR keeps climbing to show how much aura they owe, complete with interest. Every time interest gets added, APR announces, "It's time," adding interest. Any attacks they land on Knuckle return aura to him and lower their debt counter. During this period, Knuckle becomes completely immune to physical damage from that opponent. The flip side means Knuckle's attack only add more aura debt instead of causing harm. Stronger attacks means more aura gets lent or returned, though both fighters can still get knocked around despite taking no actual damage. APR charges a brutal 10% interest rate on all borrowed aura, adding it every 10 seconds. The catch is that victims need to stay within 50 meters of Knuckle for the counter to keep running. Step outside that range and the timer pauses until they get back in range. Knuckle can use Hakawari on multiple people simultaneously and track their locations, no matter how far away they go. As the debt piles up, APR physically grows larger to match the amount owed. While APR can't be destroyed, victims have 3 options for getting rid of it. They can find an exorcist to remove it, though this burdens the Nin remover considerably. They can force Knuckle to deactivate the APR himself, or they can knock Knuckle unconscious or eliminate him entirely. If none of those options work, APR sticks around and keeps adding to the debt. When someone's debt exceeds their remaining aura capacity, they go completely bankrupt. Bankrupt triggers APR's transformation into the Individual Ren Suppressor, or IRS, a demon-like mascot that shadows the debtor for exactly 30 days. During this entire month, IRS forces them into a continuous Zet state, completely blocking their ability to use Nin and leaving them defenseless against any threats. Countdown. Ginthru goes by the nickname The Bomber and takes center stage as the main villain during the Greed Island arc. This conjurer has mastered the art of blending his natural abilities with omission and manipulation to create his terrifying Nin ability called Countdown. Countdown works through a twisted activation process that requires 2 specific conditions, though Ginthru can complete them in any order he wants. First, he wants to physically touch his target while saying "Bomber" out loud. Second, he must explain both of his abilities completely and in the right sequence. Interestingly, demonstrating his ability counts as explaining them, which is why Ginthru didn't need to break down how Little Flower worked when he activated Countdown, since his targets have already seen those weaker bombs in action. Once both conditions get met, Ginthru conjures a bomb inside his victim and the countdown timer begins at 6,000. The timer links directly to the victim's pulse, speeding up whenever their heart rate increases from stress or panic. When that counter hits 0, the target explodes from within, creating a blast 10 times more devastating than his Little Flower bombs. Ginthru used this brutal technique to eliminate multiple players throughout the game. Getting tagged with Countdown doesn't automatically mean death, since Ginthru built in a removal condition. Victims can nullify the bomb by touching him and saying, "I caught the bomber," before their time runs out. The challenge lies in actually getting close enough to pull this off, while Ginthru actively tries to avoid capture. Not to mention the effectiveness of Little Flower in close range situations, so you might as well be falling into his trap if you try to get near him. Like other Nin curses, an exorcist can remove Ginthru's bombs, but only if they're willing to take on the burden themselves. Ginthru's sneaky nature shows through his ability to detonate bombs manually at any moment, even while the countdown continues ticking. He pulls this off by touching thumbs with his 2 accomplices, Sub and Bara, with all 3 saying "release" simultaneously. This gives him complete control over when his victims die, making him unpredictable and even more dangerous. Rental Pod. Leol was a Chimera Ant squadron leader who made the smart choice to rejoin and pledge his loyalty to Meruem after the Queen died. In return for his allegiance, he got hooked up with a Nin ability courtesy of Royal Guard Shiapoof. Eventually, he developed his own signature technique called Rental Pod. Just like Krollo's ability Stealing Power comes with its fair share of conditions to jump through, Leo's ability Borrowing Trick operates under his own set of conditions. Rental Pod lets him temporarily borrow other people's Nin abilities, but he's gotta work for it. 2 specific conditions need to be met for each ability he wants to get his hands on. First condition is pretty straightforward. He needs to either know what the ability is called or witness it in action. Second condition gets a bit more personal. He has to do the ability owner a legitimate favor and get them to acknowledge they owe him one, usually involving some variation of "you owe me, alright," to seal the deal. Once Leo checks both boxes, the owner's name, ability name, and usage count all get automatically logged into his IOU dispenser, this nifty little gadget that looks surprisingly similar to an iPod. Just like with Skill Hunter, there's a catch though. If the original owner dies, their info gets wiped from the machine and that ability becomes permanently unavailable. When Leo wants to actually use a borrowed ability, he operates the dispenser to print out a receipt, then tears it up. This gives him exactly 1 hour to access that power. During that window, the original owner can't use their own ability. He put the system to work when he borrowed Flutter's satellite Tombow and Super Eye's ability to track down human intruders around Beijing, following Pito's direct orders. At this point, Leo was planning to stay loyal to Meruem indefinitely, at least until the day the king might end up owing him a favor so he can borrow his ability. During his underground church showdown with Moral, Leo activated his borrow ability, Inamura, which he snagged from one of Moral's buddies. His strategy seemed bulletproof: flood the entire church and control the water flow to drown his opponent. Unfortunately for Leo, this plan completely backfired. Moral turned out to be way more prepared than expected, using his ridiculous lung capacity to stay submerged for ages, while pumping out massive amounts of carbon dioxide to poison Leo up on the surface. Tag. Chitu was another Chimera Ant squadron leader who happened to be the fastest among all of them. After the queen died, he bounced from the nest with dreams of becoming the Speed King, but eventually had a change of heart. His encounter with Moral and Knuckle made him realize pure speed wasn't enough, especially after Knuckles slapped that annoying APR on him. The floating mascot completely ruined his day since he couldn't outrun the thing no matter how fast he moved. When Chitu finally made it to the palace, Hina exorcised the APR from him, and Shiapoof granted him a new Nin ability. Naturally, he decided to test his fresh power on Moral, while the veteran hunter was keeping watch over Beijing. The ability activated through physical contact, trapping both fighters inside an artificial Nin space that looked like a massive savanna about the size of a baseball field. This enclosed area was completely cut off from the real world by a dome decorated with painted sky images. Chitu explained the rules with total confidence. Both of them were stuck inside the space until Moral could touch him before the 8-hour time limit ran out. A giant hourglass sitting in the middle of the area kept track of the countdown. Nobody really knew what would happen if Moral failed to catch him in time, not even Chitu himself. To boost the ability's power, Chitu added a risky condition. If he got caught even once, he'd lose the ability forever. He was completely confident in his speed, so this seemed like a safe bet. Moral immediately spotted the weakness in this tag ability and decided to take a completely different approach. Instead of chasing Chitu around, he just sat down to rest for 5 hours, which absolutely infuriated the Chimera Ant. Chitu tried everything to provoke Moral into giving chase, but around the 4-hour mark, he got bored and started reading a book instead. When Moral finally stood up, Chitu noticed a smoke rope connecting his ankle to the hunter's pipe. He tried desperately to run away and break free, but Moral just reeled him in like a fish. Feeling cornered, Chitu panicked and created a second ability on the spot, conjuring a crossbow and a set of claws. He fired at Moral, who casually blocked the bolt with his pipe, while pointing out how stupid it was to use a weapon slower than his own legs. This comment sent Chitu into a rage and he rushed forward to stab Moral with the claws, only to discover he attacked a smoke clone. The real Moral appeared behind him and touched his shoulder, instantly sending them both back to Beijing. The condition of his ability meant Chitu could never use it again, but this didn't bother him much. He simply headed back to the palace to get another ability from Shiapoof, already itching for a rematch with Moral. He emerged from his cocoon with yet another new power just before the extermination team launched their raid on the palace. Chitu went hunting for Moral, but couldn't break into Smoky Jail. After spotting Zeno, he followed the assassin outside the palace and demanded a fight. Wrong move though, because before he could even react, Silva had crushed him to death from above. Merman Clairvoyance. Palm Siberia was a hunter who worked as Nov's apprentice, and she had this pretty unique ability called Merman Clairvoyance. Her original setup was kind of elaborate. She could spy on anyone she wanted using a crystal ball, but there were some weird requirements involved. She had to see the target with her own eyes first, then feed her blood to this dried merman corpse that carried the crystal ball around. Sounds gross, but it worked perfectly when she needed to track down Gon and Killua after the boys decided to ditch her and run off. Everything changed after Palm got turned into a Chimera Ant though. She managed to keep her surveillance ability, but the mechanics got a serious upgrade. The whole merman corpse situation was completely unnecessary now. Instead, she developed this much cleaner system where she could register targets just by looking at them with her right eye. Once someone was locked into the crystal that appeared in her forehead, she could switch to her left eye and instantly see whatever they were doing, no matter how far away they were. She can also keep tabs on 3 people simultaneously, which was way more convenient than carrying around that creepy merman figure everywhere she went. Postmortem Bungee Gum. Postmortem Nin is one of those wild concepts where dying doesn't shut down a Nin user's abilities. It actually cranks them up to 11. When someone with serious grudges kicks the bucket, their Nin gets this crazy obsessive quality, latching onto whatever they hated most and refusing to let go. P2's Tepsakura is the perfect example. Even after Gon literally decapitated them, their Puppet Master ability kept their headless body moving, still trying to take Gon down. Camilla, on the other hand, takes this concept and runs with it by making her own death the trigger for her ability. Sure, she comes back to life afterward, but that temporary death state supercharges everything she can do. Some Nin abilities stay active even long after their users are gone for good. Misha Hao from the Ji Yu family and Prince Kacho both left behind abilities that kept working even when they're long dead. Even Corello's got one in his collection. The Sun and Moon belonged to someone who died ages ago, but it's still sitting pretty in his Skull Hunter book, as effective as ever. In fact, the ability can bypass the limitations and restrictions of his skill hunter. Hisoka caught onto this whole death makes you stronger thing during his brutal fight with Corello after his explanation on this post-mortem ability. So when those exploding puppets were swarming him and death looked inevitable, he made a last-ditch gamble. He programmed Bungee Gum with a simple but desperate condition. If he dies, the ability should kick in and restart his body. Pump the heart, work the lungs, get everything moving again. He then crossed his arms over his chest to protect his vital organs before the explosion tore through him, claiming his life and hundreds of innocent spectators who were turned into bomb puppets. The blast killed him outright, but moments after they declared him dead, Bungee Gum activated and dragged him back to life. The revival itself was just the beginning though. Post-mortem Nin had transformed his abilities into something way more versatile than before. Bungee Gum could now stop bleeding around his mangled neck and face, something it never did previously. Then Texture Surprise stepped up, recreating blown-off flesh and skin to patch up his face. He even crafted rubber prosthetics for his missing left hand and right leg, essentially rebuilding himself from scratch. This level of medical reconstruction was completely new territory for his abilities. Before the fight, Hisoka had actually hired Machi to handle his inevitable injuries because he knew the battle would wreck him regardless of who won. After his resurrection though, he didn't need outside help anymore. His enhanced Nin could handle the repair work solo. The power boost was so significant that he could easily immobilize Machi with his upgraded Bungee Gum, using her as a messenger to warn the entire Phantom Troop that he was coming for all of them. Missile Man. Welfin is one of the Chimera Ant squadron leaders who rejoined Meruem after the Queen died, which earned him a Nin ability courtesy of Shiapoof. His Conjurer ability, Missile Man, pretty much sums up everything about his personality wrapped into one package. The ability isn't really built for straight-up combat, but is perfect for getting people to do what you want through pure intimidation. When activated, Welfin conjures this grotesque organic missile launcher that sprouts from his back, complete with a shrunken head and 4 alien limbs gripping missiles. Missile Man operates on a 3-step process that's deceptively simple. First, Welfin identifies his target. Then he loads a missile with either a question or a direct order. Finally, if the target lies or refuses to comply, the missile launch will start their relentless pursuit. Once all 3 steps execute properly, those missiles will chase the target forever until they connect, even if Welfin loses track of where they went. The ability can definitely backfire though. Welfin has to correctly identify his target, which became a problem when he sensed Meliorn nearby but couldn't actually see him due to his invisibility. The missiles misfired because Welfin couldn't lock on to the right person. Missileman also has some serious tactical limitations. It doesn't actually stop targets from attacking Welfin directly. The deterrent effect only works if they're scared of getting hit. Someone willing to take the missile damage can absolutely strike first while Welfin's setting up. The ability also requires verbal interaction, making stealth impossible, and the whole setup process takes way too long for quick encounters. These limitations frustrated Welfin enough that he mostly dismissed his own ability, only pulling it out during negotiations where he had time to work with it properly. When the missiles finally hit, they don't explode in the traditional sense. Instead, they implant live black centipedes directly into the target's head. These centipedes are particularly nasty. They feed on defiance and disobedience, growing larger and causing increasingly brutal pain until they eventually kill their host. If the target tries to murder Welfin, the centipedes instantly expand to fatal size, killing the host before they can complete their attack. Welfin can't remove the centipedes once they're implanted, but there's a weird emotional component to the ability. When Welfin experiences genuine defeat or sincerity, those feelings actually poison the centipedes and causes them to die off completely. He had no idea this aspect existed until it happened accidentally. During the palace raid, Welfin used Missile Man on Ikalgo. Despite the excruciating pain from the centipedes, Ikalgo's determination to protect his human friends pushed him to endure the torture and shoot Welfin anyway, incapacitating him. When Ikalgo asked about his human memories, Welfin's mind flashed back to his childhood, a brutal period filled with abuse and misery. Gyro had rescued him from that nightmare and gave him purpose. Remembering his deep gratitude towards Gyro and his desperate wish to see him again triggered such genuine sincerity that the centipedes inside Ikalgo immediately died and disappeared. After Meruem's death, Wolfen set out for Meteor City to find Gyro, the person he truly considers his one true king. Grimo the Dissonance. Hulkenberg is the ninth prince of the Kakin Empire, stuck in the middle of a brutal succession contest where siblings kill each other for the throne. Initially, he absolutely hated the whole concept of this royal deathmatch. He was so disgusted by the system that he considered murdering his own father and even taking his own life just to end the bloody succession war once and for all. But then, reality hit him hard. The only way to actually fix this rotten system was to win it himself and become king. Once that realization sank in, his entire mindset flipped. With his newfound determination to claim the throne, Hulkenberg unlocked a Nin ability that's both incredibly powerful and devastatingly costly. His ability lets him tap into the aura of his most loyal followers, specifically those who bear his guardian spirit beast's mark. He converts their collective aura into protective armor that shields him from attacks, while also forming it into a deadly arrow. His own personal aura shapes itself into a bow that he grips with his right hand and draws with his left. The arrow he fires is absolutely unstoppable and punches through any defense imaginable, including Nin abilities specifically designed to block incoming attacks. Walls, barriers, protective techniques, nothing can stop this projectile from reaching its target. But the arrow doesn't kill on impact. Instead, it injects the mind of one of his most marked subordinates directly into the target's body. The major limitation is that Hulkenberg has zero control over which of his people gets swapped. The ability randomly selects from anyone bearing his mark, including himself. This unpredictability makes every shot a complete gamble, with potentially devastating consequences. The soul swap mechanic works like a crazy version of musical chairs. Let's say person A from Hulkenberg's side gets swapped with target B. Once the swap happens, only one conscious can be active at a time, and A's mind gets priority control over B's body. Meanwhile, B's mind gets forced into a sleep-like state inside A's original body, completely unable to wake up until A's consciousness falls asleep or B's body dies. If B's body dies while A's mind is controlling it, A's consciousness simply vanishes forever, essentially murdered along with the body they were inhabiting. This means only followers willing to die for Hulkenberg's cause can safely be marked for potential swapping. Even Hulkenberg himself risks permanent death every time he fires the arrow, since he could randomly swap himself into a target's body. If A's original body dies while their mind is controlling B's body, things get even weirder. B's consciousness returns to their own body, but now it has to share it with A's mind. The twist is that B's mind now gets priority control, while A's consciousness becomes the dormant one. Hulkenberg first tested this ability on Shikaku, one of Benjamin's soldiers. The random selection picked Sumadori, one of Hulkenberg's most devoted followers, to inhabit Shikaku's body. Curious about what would happen if the possessed body died, Sumadori understood the implications and deliberately shot himself in the head while controlling Shikaku's body. The experiment revealed the ability's horrific costs. Sumadori's consciousness disappeared forever when Shikaku's body died, while Shikaku's mind likely returned to inhabit Sumadori's original body. The test confirmed that using this ability essentially means sacrificing one of his people's lives for each successful hit. Despite knowing these deadly consequences, Hulkenberg plans to use this ability against Balsamilko in a desperate assassination attempt on Benjamin. He's willing to risk everything, including potentially swapping his own consciousness into Balsamilko's body just to get close enough to eliminate his brother before time runs out. Contagion. Marina Prudo runs the Haley family, one of the three biggest mafia operations in the Kakin Empire. She's a specialist who developed Nin abilities on her own, earning her the title Member Zero within her organization. Her backstory gets pretty dark. She was originally an orphan who killed and replaced the real Marina, an illegitimate daughter of King Nasubi. Once she became boss, Marina forced her underlings to slaughter each other until 22 survived. This wasn't just random brutality. The number 22 directly ties into the core limitation of her Nin ability called Contagion. Contagion works like a twisted infection spread through her saliva. She can only infect up to 22 people maximum, creating a group bound by her ability's rules. When any infected member kills someone, they level up, boosting their aura capacity and output significantly. The leveling system gets really interesting at specific thresholds. At level 20, infected members automatically manifest their own unique Nin ability. They gain at least basic knowledge of how their new power works before using it, which removes the usual trial and error learning curve. At level 100, members achieve Member Zero status themselves, getting the ability to create their own 22-person communities with the same infection mechanics. Marina assigns all the experience points personally, maintaining total control over her group's progression. For the Black Whale Voyage, she established a point system that incentivizes maximum carnage. Killing a regular person nets 1 level. Murdering a Nin user gives 10 levels, and assassinating a prince awards a massive 50 levels. Marina herself currently sits at level 45. This point system creates a huge problem for everyone aboard the ship. Her infected members become murder-hungry maniacs, desperate to level up and unlock stronger abilities, turning the entire cruise into a bloodbath. The infection process has 3 mandatory conditions that create serious limitations and tactical vulnerabilities. First, both Marina and her target must play her negotiation card game, with the target's final card being yes or something that lets them choose that outcome. This condition forces Marina to risk revealing information about contagion during the game, while the target risks death if they lose. Second, Marina must kiss the person she wants to infect. This requires close physical contact, putting her in potential danger if the target decides to attack during the process. Third, the target must witness either Marina or one of her allies commit murder. This condition means she can't just kiss someone and immediately activate their infection. They have to stick around for a killing, which gives them opportunities to escape. Until all 3 conditions are met, kissed targets remain at level 0 with no contagion benefits whatsoever. The ability also grants Marina complete surveillance over her network. She knows the exact location, current status, point total, and level of anyone who's at least level 0. This tracking continues until either the target dies or Marina herself gets killed. Marina compared her ability to a mobile game, mentioning that contagion ends when someone clears the game, most likely when they hit level 100 and become their own member 0. Damage, Sweet Home. Terabellum belongs to the Haley family and works as an emitter at level 21 within Marina's contagion network. After reaching level 21, he unlocked his personal nin ability called Damage Sweet Home, which lets him manipulate damage in some pretty wild ways. The ability operates on a simple but risky hand-based system. When Terabellum touches something with his right hand, at the exact same moment it takes damage, he absorbs that damage into his own body. He can then transfer all that absorbed damage into whatever his left hand touches. So if an ally is stabbed in the head, he only needs to touch his ally with his right hand and hold a can of soda with his left to transfer the stab to the can, leaving his ally unscathed. The timing has to be perfect. He must make contact during the actual moment of impact for the absorption to work. His ability also has a passive component. Any damage Terabellum personally receives can be transferred out through his left hand as long as he's touching something when he gets hit. This lets him redirect his attacks against himself without needing to use his right hand first. The major limitation creates serious tactical problems. If Terabellum tries to absorb damage with his right hand, but his left hand isn't touching anything when he attempts the transfer, all that absorbed damage gets dumped directly into his left hand instead. This means he takes the full brunt of whatever attack he tries to redirect, potentially crippling or destroying his left hand in the process. The ability essentially turns Terabellum into a living damage relay, but one wrong move or mistimed touch can leave him worse off than if he'd never used his power at all. A Battle of Wits, LSDF. Yokotani works as the Haley family's legal advisor and reached level 27 through Marina's contagion ability. As a conjurer, he developed a defensive nin ability that's both powerful and severely limited by its operating conditions. The biggest restriction is location-based. His ability only functions at the specific hideout where Marina is currently located. Step outside that zone and the ability becomes completely useless. This geographic limitation makes Yokotani a sitting duck anywhere else and forces him to basically camp near his boss if he wants his powers to work. The activation requirement has another major constraint. Yokotani must formally identify himself to any intruder and explicitly state the specific laws they've broken before his ability kicks in. No identification and crime declaration means no conjured guards, giving smart intruders a window to attack him before he can get his legal spiel out. Once activated, he conjures security guards designed to apprehend lawbreakers. The guards operate under strict mutual restraint rules. They can't harm the criminal, but the criminal's attacks won't hurt them either. This creates a stalemate where violence becomes pointless for both sides. The guard gets stronger based on how serious the crimes are. Worse offenses mean tougher guards with better abilities, but they still can't actually hurt anyone because of that weird non-violence rule. When Nobunaga and Henry broke into their base, Yokotani hit them with trespassing and attempted murder charges before summoning his guard spirit. Nobunaga immediately tested how invincible these things were by slashing one up with his katana. The blade did absolutely nothing, while the guard's aura cranked up to maximum alert mode. These guards mobbed Nobunaga, pinned him down, and snatched his katana away. These things run on pure autopilot mode, chasing their mission no matter what without any chance of talking them down or calling them off. They hauled Nobunaga outside and teleported him completely away from the area. Bloody Mary. Sakuro Custer belongs to the Jiyu family, one of the 3 major mafia organizations in the Kakian Empire. This manipulator has developed a blood-based nin ability that's both effective and deeply problematic for his own well-being. His ability lets him control his own blood with enough force to restrain opponents and slam them into the ground hard enough to knock them unconscious. Once he's done using the blood as a weapon, he can call it back into his body and instantly stop any bleeding, which prevents him from dying from blood loss during extended fights. This major limitation creates a brutal catch-22 situation. Zaguro needs an open wound to access his blood for combat purposes, but he's too squeamish to cut himself. This means he has to wait for opponents to injure him before his ability becomes useful, essentially requiring him to take damage before he can dish it out. He actually thanks attackers when they wound him because they're solving his biggest activation problem. The dependency on blood loss forces Zaguro to carry an IV bag everywhere he goes. This serves both practical and conditional purposes. He needs the blood replacement for health reasons, but is also apparently required for his ability to function properly. Lugging around medical equipment makes him conspicuous and limits his mobility during operations. Beyond combat applications, his blood can transform into autonomous search agents. The blood droplets develop their own eyes and act independently when used for reconnaissance missions. The Jiyu family deployed this technique while hunting for Hisoka, with the droplets spreading out to cover more ground. These blood scouts have regenerative properties and can reform after being crushed or damaged. However, they operate on a strict time limit of 30 to 40 minutes before his aura runs out and the droplets revert to normal blood. Benjamin Baton. Benjamin is the first prince of the Kakin and serves as the deputy military advisor for the royal army. His nin ability lets him collect the powers of his dead soldiers. The inheritance system has multiple restrictive conditions that limit who Benjamin can actually inherit abilities from. First, the nin user must be a graduate of Kakin Royal Military Academy. No random soldiers or outside recruits qualify. Second, they have to be official members of his personal army, not just regular military personnel. Third, and most importantly, each soldier must swear a personal loyalty oath to Benjamin before their death for the transfer to work. These limitations mean Benjamin can only inherit from a very specific subset of his forces. The ability manifests as 4 stars tattooed under his fingers on his right palm, which might indicate a hard cap of 4 inherited abilities maximum. This would mean Benjamin has to choose carefully about which abilities are worth inheriting. When soldiers die with their abilities active, those powers transfer directly to Benjamin without being deactivated. He can even inherit abilities that were stolen or lost by the original user, which happened with Vincent, whose ability was stolen by Kurapika before his death. So far, Benjamin has collected 3 abilities from dead subordinates. Vincent's air blow came to him after the soldier poisoned himself to avoid Kurapika's interrogation. Moose's secret weapon transferred when Camilla killed him. Shikaku's Codecept joined the collection after Hulkenberg's ability caused his death. Predator. Rihan serves as a high-ranking soldier in the Kakin Royal Army and works directly under Prince Benjamin. He was assigned to protect Prince Saleh Saleh as part of Benjamin's scheme to eliminate the Prince Guardian Spirit Beast. His nin ability called Predator can counter and shut down other nin abilities, but the requirements make it incredibly risky to use. The ability operates by growing a Predator inside Rihan's body after he selects a target. The catch is that he can't just counter any random ability on the spot. Predator demands complete understanding of whatever he wants to neutralize, which means Rihan has to personally observe the target ability multiple times to figure out how it works. The more accurate his analysis, the better his Predator can counter it. This observation requirement creates massive tactical problems. When tasked with eliminating Saleh Saleh's Guardian Spirit Beast, Rihan spent 5 full days secretly watching and analyzing how the beast operated. 5 days of covert surveillance just to understand one ability. That's a huge time investment that leaves him vulnerable to discovery. Once he gathers enough intel, he focuses his aura between his hands and breathes out to conjure the Predator. In Saleh Saleh's case, the Predator swallowed the Prince Guardian Spirit completely and then mistook its place at the Prince's side. Non-nin users couldn't see the replacement, making it a perfect stealth assassination tool. Rihan describes his own ability as an inaccurate spray and pray weapon that carries massive risk but guarantees victory if it connects. The ability has several crippling weaknesses that make it nearly useless in many situations. Predator completely fails against simple enhancement and emission attacks, because these abilities target the user directly, meaning the enhanced opponent will likely retaliate immediately. It also struggles against enemies with multiple abilities or counteractive powers that can adapt to his Predator. The most brutal limitation kicks in after successful use. Rihan loses access to all nin abilities for 48 hours after Predator counters something. This total power shutdown leaves him defenseless for 2 full days, which is why he requested a soldier swap to handle Saleh Saleh's actual assassination. Another critical restriction prevents Rihan from taking shortcuts with intelligence gathering. He must personally collect all information about target abilities himself. Getting details from teammates or allies weaken Predator to the point where it can't neutralize anything. This is why Balsamilko refuses to share intel about Hulkenberg's ability, because giving Rihan that information would sabotage Predator's effectiveness, even though they're planning to target Hulkenberg after Prince Tubepa. Stand By Me. Yashohi is another high-ranking soldier working directly under Prince Benjamin in the Kakin Royal Army. Originally assigned to watch and spy on Prince Fugetsu, he got reassigned to swap places with Rihan for guarding Prince Saleh Saleh, with secret orders to kill the prince. His assassination ability, Stand By Me, works through a conjured stinger ball, basically a tiny insect-sized orb with 4 wings and a needle that he assigns to specific targets. After deployment, the ability has an incubation period before it kills the target through some unknown method. The timing varies significantly based on whether the target uses Nin or not, with non-users taking much longer to die than Nin users. The ability has several major operational flaws that make it risky for assassination work. The biggest limitation is range-based. If the target moves more than 20 meters away from Yashohi, Stand By Me automatically deactivates. The real problem is that Yashohi gets no notification when this happens, so he could be sitting around waiting for someone to die while his ability stopped working hours ago. Detection creates another serious vulnerability. If anyone finds and removes the stinger ball from the target, the ability becomes permanently useless against that specific person. Yashohi can never target them again with Stand By Me, which means one careful victim can make themselves immune forever. The stinger ball produces a buzzing sound that only Nin users can hear, which actually helps Yashohi identify who has Nin abilities and who doesn't. This detection feature is useful for intelligence gathering, but also means that Nin using targets have a much better chance of noticing and removing the device. Despite these limitations, Yashohi successfully eliminated Prince Saleh Saleh the night after swapping positions with Rihan, then reported the completed assassination back to his superiors. Spatial Teleportation. Ruini belongs to the Haley family and climbed past level 21 through Marina's contagion ability. This emitter developed a portal-based Nin ability that's both incredibly useful and painfully restrictive. His ability only works under very specific room conditions that severely limit when and where he can use it. Ruini needs to be inside a room with exactly one closed door and completely impenetrable walls. No open doorways, no windows, no weak spots in the structure. Once these conditions are met, he can open a portal in the wall or the floor that leads to an alternate dimension. This dimensional travel lets him teleport to any location he's previously visited, which makes it perfect for espionage and surprise attacks. Ruini thought the ability might even let him escape the Black Well entirely, though he worried about the reset mechanism and never got the chance to test that theory. The return trip works from anywhere. He can pop back into the sealed room from any location he travels to, but the ability has a devastating permanent failure condition that makes it extremely fragile. If anyone opens the original door while he's away, the room loses its sealed status and the ability resets completely. Once that happens, Ruini can never use that specific room again for his portal ability. This reset vulnerability creates massive tactical problems. Anyone who discovers his setup can permanently destroy his ability just by opening a door. It also means that he has to trust that nobody will accidentally or intentionally unseal his room while he's traveling through dimensions. Ruini frequently used the ability for spying operations, portaling to target locations to eavesdrop on conversations without being detected. Unfortunately, he stumbles upon the Phantom Troop and decides to mess with them, ensuring his death when Nobunaga swiftly stabs him in the head. Battle Cantabile Metamorphosin. Manolanov Ndongo is Phantom Troop's member number 10. His Nin ability, Battle Cantabile, is a set of conjuration-based techniques with multiple movements, each offering a different effect. We first see it during the Phantom Troop's battle against Zazen's Chimera Ant Squad in Meteor City. Facing off against a gun-wielding ant, Manolanov uses Prologue, which lets him conjure up a warrior outfit and a spear. Then it goes bigger, literally with Jupiter, summoning a massive spear resembling the planet itself to crush his opponent. But the ability has more layers, revealed in the Succession War arc when Manolanov disguises himself as Hisoka. This is thanks to his Battle Cantabile Metamorphosin, which lets him transform into someone else entirely. However, there are certain conditions and restrictions for his shape-shifting ability to work. He can only take the form of someone he's previously spoken to. He also can't maintain the transformation for as long as he wants. It can only last as long as the total time he spent with that person. This explains how he can convincingly impersonate Hisoka. They have spent considerable time together as fellow troop members. The transformation even has no apparent size restrictions, which is rare for this type of ability, though Manolanov suspects shorter targets shorten the transformation duration. Disguised as Hisoka, Manolanov runs into Zakuro and Lynch. Lynch's ability lets her uncover his secret, so after taking them both down, he kills Lynch. but only after transforming into Zakuro to do it, ensuring Hisoka stays above suspicion. To keep things quiet, he then turns into Lynch, wakes Zakuro up, and sends them in a different direction to look for Hisoka again. Being near the impersonated person while they're unconscious still counts towards that limit. Back in Hisoka's form, Benolov eventually finds the real one in a Tier 1 casino. Following Cruella's orders, he changes into Owl of the Shadow Beast using Metamorphosin and continues moving through the casino unnoticed. Moonlight Act. Longhi works as the royal bodyguard for Prince Tubepa and gets assigned to take Kurapika's nin lessons alongside Mayor. When Tubepa orders them to negotiate some kind of peace deal with Kurapika, who is guarding Prince Wobble, Longhi decides to use her secret nin ability, Moonlight Act, to broker an alliance. Her ability revolves entirely around the concept of nin contracts and their associated rewards or punishments. The ability lets her create binding agreements that can either reward people for following the terms or penalize them brutally if they break the contract. She transmutes her aura into the form of an aura pen and aura paper to write and sign these deals. Before she can get anyone to sign anything, she herself faces a mandatory truth-telling requirement that creates some serious vulnerabilities. She must reveal her entire true plan and all relevant information to the other party, including personal info about herself and how her ability operates before proceeding with any contract. This restriction prevents her from deceiving people into signing bad deals, but it also means she has to expose potentially damaging secrets. When approaching Kurapika for the alliance, Longhi drops a massive bombshell to fulfill this requirement. She reveals that she's actually the daughter of Beyond Netero, and that she's just one of many children Beyond had who were raised by different Kakian officers before being deployed as royal guards for the princes. She speculates that Beyond planted one of his own children among the princes themselves and wants to ensure his kid wins the succession contest. After explaining her background, Longhi details how Moonlight Act functions. The ability allows her to loan her powers to others or restrict their actions through limited-term contracts. The signature must be completely voluntary. Any coercion or trickery invalidates the entire contract. She has to explain every single detail of the contract's terms before anyone can sign, which means no hidden clauses or surprise conditions. The contract Longhi proposes with Kurapika contains multiple specific terms that create both protections and potential problems. Neither side can interfere with or attack the other side's prince, queen, or guards until 9 AM on Sunday. The contract automatically renews for another week if a Tubepa representative stays present in Prince Wobble's room. Moonlight Act only activates to enforce penalties if Kurapika's size violates the terms, with the punishments being a full week of forced zets. Healing and support actions don't count as attacks, which prevents medical aid from triggering violations. The contract includes protective clauses for both sides. Tubepa's team can't unilaterally terminate the deal unless they discover actual malice acts from Wobble's side, and Longhi promises never to arbitrarily interpret Wobble's actions as hostile. These terms prevent either side from breaking the contract over misunderstandings or minor infractions. Longhi adds a personal stipulation that creates additional risk and rewards. Wobble's side must identify which prince is Beyond's child before either Tubepa withdraws or only 2 princes remain alive. If they discover that none of the princes are actually Beyond's children, Moonlight Act immediately activates to reward Wobble's side instead of punishing them. The personal stipulation comes with its own complications. It expires when Tubepa cancels the truce, but Longhi offers to create a separate contract directly with Kurapika if he wants to continue the investigation. She promises to compensate him with a potentially one-time use of Moonlight Act itself, though the penalties remain limited to the week-long Zets punishment. The mandatory explanation requirement means Longhi can't hide the fact that forced Zets is currently her only known penalty method. This gives potential contract signers complete information about the risks they're taking, but it also limits her negotiating power since people know exactly what they're facing if they break the terms. Kurapika ultimately agrees to sign Longhi's contract and collaborate with Tubepa, but only on the condition that Wobble and her mother Oedo accompany him when he visits Princess Tubepa's room. This acceptance creates a binding agreement that puts both sides under Moonlight Act's enforcement mechanism for the duration specified in the terms. Silent Majority. Silent Majority belongs to a mysterious assassin working aboard the Black Whale, systematically picking off guards in Prince Wobble's quarters both before and during Kurapika's nin lessons. This ability centers around a creepy marionette puppet that only 2 people can actually see, the user themselves and whoever gets possessed by it. The assassin can only target one person within their range at a time, but there's a nasty catch. If they deactivate the marionette without killing anyone, the curse bounces right back to them. Talk about high stakes. During one of Kurapika's nin lessons, they possessed one of Prince Kacho's maids. When the maid suddenly started seeing the marionette and realized nobody else could, she completely freaked out, pointing at this weird woman only she could see. That panic gave the assassin exactly the opening they needed. Their target was Berrigan, a bodyguard protecting Prince Miriam. Poor guy dropped to his knees, clutching his throat as 4 grotesque snakes materialized around him. These weren't ordinary snakes either. Each one had multiple mouths scattered across their bodies, creating numerous holes in their victim to drain every drop of blood. A single snake takes 44 seconds to completely drain someone, but with all 4 working together, they can finish the job in just 11 seconds. When the snakes get their marching orders, the eyes of 4 identical snakes on the marionette's chest light up like some sick signal. Once Barrigan was dead, the marionette vanished completely. Bill pointed out something crucial. Since everyone can see the conjured snakes, the user faces way more risk, which makes the ability deadlier. Kurapika noted that shutting down the ability makes the snakes disappear instantly, and suspected manipulation was involved, essentially turning it into a visually controlled remote killing system.